When I was first contacted by Christie's, I wondered why, rather than choosing one of their usual tastemakers, who tend to be either great designers or great design houses like Pierre Frey, they asked me. I'm not an interior designer. I am the chatelaine of the 16th century Chateau de Lalande in the heart of rural France. I bought it when I was only 29 years old, many years ago, back in 2005. I own this chateau along with my two best friends. For the first decade, I found myself quite isolated here because the friends that I bought with actually live in Brussels and Amsterdam, and I was trying to restore this chateau, which had seemed a great bargain when we bought it. Chateaus are not that pricey in France. The problem is renovating them and maintaining them does take an enormous amount of money. And for the first 10 years, we were making progress, but slowly, and I was beginning to despair of ever finishing the chateau. But 3 years ago, I launched a YouTube channel about daily life here. I live with a lot of volunteers, just really wonderful people from all over the world, and they keep coming and going, and everyone helps. We're a big community, a team, restoring this chateau. And I was making these videos as a record of my time here, a sort of diary. That's why I called it the Chateau Diaries. But suddenly last year, my channel exploded. And now, with the help of my patrons and my viewers, we are restoring the chateau. And that is what brought us to the attention of Christie's. It was Jill, who is the head of Silver, who reached out to me. And whilst I was at Christie's, I asked her why she had chosen me.
My aunt introduced me to your channel during COVID. We followed you throughout the pandemic, and watching you pull the restorations together in the house with such few resources at the beginning of the pandemic. And it was really inspiring. We just love watching the renovations of the chateau. And the Grand Salon, that's so exciting. And obviously, I spend most of my time in China pantries, so I'm really excited to see what you do there.
Yeah. I immediately accepted Jill's offer. It was such a huge honor for me to be asked by Christie's to do this. Since I was a little girl, I have loved going to auctions with my parents. In fact, the daybed behind me I bought when I was 17 at auction, and there are many pieces in this chateau that I've bought from Christie's over the years. One of my favorites being a lit à la polonaise that I bought shortly after coming to the chateau, and it was just 3 original pieces from the 18th century, the 2 end pieces and the bed crown. That was it. And it took quite a lot of imagination and a lot of skill. I asked a carpenter to make the side pieces, and a local blacksmith made the pieces that hold the crown above the bed, and I made all of the bed hangings. I bought the silks from an extraordinary silk mill in England called the Gainsborough Silk Mill, and I created this fantasy of a fairy tale bed, which I'd always loved the idea of doing. And that's what I love about buying pieces at auction. I know that whenever I have slept in it, I can't help but wonder who else slept in that bed over centuries, and I imagine the stories that they may have had. I love anything that comes with a sense of history and a story attached to it. So I knew I really wanted to do this collaboration, but what was I, who was not a designer, going to bring to Christie's? And I thought, let's bring some of French chateau, specifically Lalande life. We're a bit of an unusual chateau because we live in this chateau rather in the way that chateaus would have been lived in the past. There are many people living here, not just a small nuclear family. We're all coming and going regularly, and there's a lot of hard work, but there's a lot of parties and celebrations. So I like the feeling that Lalande is really living as it would have done in the past now. Maybe because I'm half British and half French, my interiors tend to be a mixture between the formal French decorative arts tradition, which I love. I'm so drawn to chateau interiors, but also the British side, which loves comfort and a little eccentricity. I like whimsy and a bit of fun and playfulness in my interiors as well. The home should tell a story. It should reflect all of its inhabitants. And here we come from all over the world. Just today, living in the chateau, there are people from England, the Netherlands, Argentina, Hong Kong, Russia. I mean, the list goes on and on. We're a very international group, and I love rooms that reflect that. I like to have pieces from all over the world, a home that shows global travel, global influences, and pieces from different centuries, as though it wasn't decorated in one go, but as though a family's been living in it and each generation adds pieces that are fashionable in their time. That's the feeling that I wanted to take to Christie's. But what we had to work with were simply 2 white walls. on a set. And I was wondering, how was I going to bring my personal love of colour and pattern and all this playfulness that comes with it onto that set. So I spoke to Jill and I said, I'm very happy to paint. Can we paint it different colours? Is there any way of getting wallpaper, because I so love pattern? And just 1 week before we actually started shooting, she got back to me saying that she had contacted Pierre Frey, the most extraordinary French design house, who have bought many of the historic French decorative houses like Braconnier. Braconnier have been going since the early 1800s. They made the fabrics and the carpets for the emperor, even decorating his private train wagon in those days. And they had bought many of the archives of the famous Toiles de Jouy in France when the factory at Jouy-en-Josas closed in the 19th century. So this amazing body of French tradition is all housed with Pierre Frey now, who are a company that I have extraordinary admiration for. And unbeknownst to me, Jill had contacted them and sent them a video that I made of a beautiful hotel in Avignon in the south of France called La Mirande. And it's been redecorated exactly as it would have been in the 18th century using Braconnier fabrics. And I did a long video about the decoration of this historic home that so entranced me. And she sent that to Pierre Frey, and they said that they loved it and they would love to come on board with our collaboration. And they offered to send the wallpapers and fabrics that we would need. And we were so scared that they weren't going to get there in time, because it was really 1 week before, but they couriered them the very next day and they arrived, and we had glorious fabrics and wallpapers to use for the vignettes. They asked me to choose pieces from their latest collaboration with Caspari. Pierre Frey, this traditional French company, joined forces with Caspari, makers of the most beautiful stationery and paper napkins, paper products in America. And these two design houses joined forces to make what I consider a stunning collaboration. Patrick Frey, one of the sons of the original founder of Pierre Frey, spent a lot of time in America, and this was his first collection that was very heavily inspired by America, specifically the East Coast. So they combined American design with strong French traditional designs and added a certain 1980s playfulness to the colors, which I loved. So this really was everything I could possibly have asked for. It was strongly in the French tradition, but it was a collaboration with an American company, which was exactly what I was doing, going from France to Christie's in New York. And it was adding whimsy in the form of these bright 80s colors, which is exactly what I'm drawn to. So it could not have been better. And here's a little peek at the creation of vignette number 1, the first in a series of 4 that chart the perfect day in the life of a chatelaine. In the next videos, I'll do a deep dive into each one and show you the glorious pieces that we were able to choose.